Hey, folks, I'm going to bring on the air my good friend, Attorney Glen Wieland. He's a lawyer right here in Orlando. Hello, Glenn, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Glenn, it's always a pleasure having you on radio because you're so informative to tell our listeners things that they need to know. And you are a personal injury attorney in Orlando, and therefore you've got a lot of expertise in that area. And the thing that I want to talk about today, we might talk about some other things as well, but I want to talk about dash cams and you being a personal injury attorney handling automobile accidents, the value of dash cams for each of us to have in our cars.
Well, Tom, I am a big proponent of dash cams, and I'll tell you, in this day and time, I know it comes as a surprise to you and most of your listeners that people don't always tell the truth.
Huh.
So when there's, even when they're under oath, Tom, and so it's so important to have video evidence of what happens. And the dash cam records everything that goes on. We also try to get as many videos as we can from whether they're street cameras or businesses, but the dash cam in your car is going to tell the truth about what happened and what you were doing. It's valuable not just for how an accident happens, but it's also valuable if you get pulled over and the police officer says you're going 90 miles an hour, because the dash cams may also record your speed. And you can bring the dash cam into court, and there have been a number of cases where they've won and beaten a ticket because the dash cam showed that they didn't run the light or they weren't speeding. Sometimes it might show you did, but it tells the truth when not everyone does.
Well, we talk about people not telling the truth, but the fact of the matter is as well that two people can see the same thing and they can see different things and remember different things. So it's just a great evidence of what might really have happened. Glenn, we know that some cars, I believe like Teslas, they come with built-in dash cams and maybe even rear cams. But most vehicles do not come with dash cams. So we're actually asking the listeners out there to consider putting a dash cam in their own car.
Absolutely, and some of the newer cars, Tom, even if it's not like a Tesla, some of the newer cars, any of the cars that will help you keep in your lane, they actually have an internal recording because they're using cameras.
Oh.
They have what's called the black box, and so you may be able to get to that. I mean, it's a little more complicated to get to it and a little more expensive to get to it, but you can get the recordings off those black boxes. So, and we do that in a lot of cases. We download the information on the black box, which tells us so much information about what's going on, but it also has videos, and we've won several cases because, everybody was saying, we had the green light. Well, we had the camera from the black box, even though our client didn't have a dash cam, that showed our client had the green light.
Glenn, I had no idea. I had no idea that was a case. My car helps me stay in the lines, and I love that feature. I had no idea that you can get into the black box and actually find video of something that happened.
Oh, absolutely. And not only will you find video, but you'll find how fast you were going. When did you hit the brakes? Did you have a turn signal on? Were your headlights on? Was the radio on? It records everything that's going on in a car. We've heard of black boxes for years with airplanes. We now have them in cars. So there's a lot of information on vehicles today that can help figure out what happened.
Glenn, I put a dash cam in my car, and I just want the listeners to know that to stick it to the windshield and run the wire across and then down and under the seat and into a place where you could plug it in so it's got power was not that difficult. So I did it all by myself, but of course you can pay somebody to professionally install that dash cam. The other thing is once I got it installed, I made sure that I adjusted it properly to get the best view, including of what the street light was at the moment that I happened to go through the intersection. So you got to make sure you point the camera in such a way to get that information.
Absolutely. And some dash cams, you want to do the front and the back because it'll show what's going on in the front and the back. And those probably should be professionally installed because you're going to have to run the wire up around the headliner. But with the other thing that's important, Tom, with these dash cams is there are some people that are now starting to run around and stop quickly in front of you and try to cause an accident, try to cause you to hit the rear of their car.
Right.
Because there's a presumption in Florida that if you have a rear-end collision, the person that struck the rear of the other car is at fault. And they'll do it like in the middle of a road, like where there's not an intersection, where there's no traffic light. They'll just all of a sudden stop, and you'll hit them, and, you know, they'll try to make a claim out of that. So it gives you proof that it wasn't your fault, or maybe they'll change lanes quickly in front of you and then slam on their brakes. We see the crazy drivers on I-4 every day.
Glenn, I remember that used to be a thing many years ago, but maybe it's coming back to be a thing again, Glenn. So
it is, and, you know, and they don't know you have a dash cam, and all of a sudden now they got a problem.
So, Glenn, as far as the video that the dash cam is shooting, is it going to be admissible in all courts of law, whether you're fighting a traffic ticket or whether you're pursuing a personal injury case?
They are admissible. There's some new rules with regard to admission of these devices and the videos. The other thing that's important, Tom, is some of these dash cams, they have an internal memory that's fairly limited. But you can put what's called an SD card or a memory card in, and it will record. It's kind of a continuous loop, but it'll record up to like 37 hours of video before it will start recording over itself. So if you do have an accident, you want to make sure you pull that SD card out of the dash cam and save it onto a computer that you can use in the future. Police officers love dash cams.
Yeah, I mean,
it helps them figure out what happened in an accident.
Well, just to keep it simple, let's say you're in an accident, just unplug the dash cam and take the whole dash cam with you before they tow your car away, you might say, right?
Absolutely, along with all your other personal items.
Exactly, yeah, good call. And Glenn, I know that my dash cam, I do believe I could set it up that either it would record audio or it would not record audio. From your perspective as a personal injury attorney that you might be pursuing an automobile accident case, what is your recommendation?
1 minute.
Well, audio's fine, but remember, audio picks up, number one, it picks up everything everyone is saying, including you. But the other thing that's important, Tom, in Florida, if you're going to record somebody talking, you better tell them they're being recorded, because otherwise there are some laws that prevent you from being able to record people. There's no law against recording video, but there are some laws about recording audio.
Hey, Glenn, I find this subject very fascinating. Glenn, we're going to take a commercial break, and if you would continue to hold. My guest today is Attorney Glen Wieland. He's a personal injury attorney right here in Orlando. Glenn, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Glenn, tell the listeners how they can reach you.
They can reach us. The firm is Wieland and Delatry, and we're downtown Orlando. Our phone number is 407-841-7699, or they can email me at Glen, Glen, at wdjustice.com.
All right, Glenn. We're talking all things dash cams today, and recommending to people that if they don't have a built-in dash cam in their car, that they either install one themselves or have one professionally installed. I installed my own dash cam in my car, Glenn, thanks to you and giving me that good heads up about it. And a couple things about my own installation, Glenn, is that I, first of all, it's wired so that my dash cam is only on while my car is running. So that if I had an accident, one thing I'd want to do would be to leave the car running so the dash cam continues to run. And then number two, I put a little cheat sheet in my glove box telling me very quickly how to play back some video. So if I were to get a ticket or have an accident, tell the officer what happened, that I could quickly in just a few minutes show the video back to the officer in charge. I haven't had to do that yet, but I don't want to have to figure it out on the fly. I want to have the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to do that.
That's a great comment for your listeners, and a lot of dash cams you can just plug them right into the cigarette lighter if you want to. But Tom, I've had people say, "Well, doesn't it block your view?" Well, Tom, mine is in my car is probably smaller than a credit card. Do you think yours blocks your view at all?
Not at all, Glenn. I've got it on the other side of the rearview mirror for me, and no, I don't even notice it. I hear it chirp every time I turn my car on, and that gives me like a little feeling of confidence. So no, not a problem, Glenn.
And you know that I've seen people driving around with cell phones stuck to their windshields that are about the size of an iPad, and I'm like, and you're worried about this little tiny camera that might block some view? It doesn't block anything in my car. And it's kind of fun to go back and watch it, and you can see some of the crazy drivers. The other thing that's also important is we do have people that cause an accident and then leave the scene of the accident.
Oh, right.
And there are cases where the dash cam was able to pick up the tag number of the car that caused the accident and left the scene. And if you get a good view of the driver, you actually have evidence of who was driving the vehicle.
Great call there, Glenn. So what we're talking about doing is that if you're in an accident and somebody is hurt, whether it's somebody in your car or somebody in the other car, it's a question of who was negligent, who caused the accident, and that's the value of having this video footage to help not only the officer that arrives on the scene, but also in pursuing or defending this personal injury case. And you're saying that it's very valuable evidence when you're in court trying to prove that issue.
Absolutely. There's also some other benefits to dash cams, Tom, and one is some of the insurance companies are now starting to give people discounts for having dash cams. And with the price of insurance in Florida, anytime you can get a little bit of a discount, it's helpful. The other thing that is sometimes important is some of these dash cams will be able to record, like if somebody breaks into your car or somebody hits your car when it's parked and you're not there, it will have the ability to record what happened, even though it wasn't powered up at the time, or you don't think it's powered up at the time. It may have enough power that it comes on. It's like Teslas with their cameras. They're not active all the time, but if somebody moves in front of the car, they sense it and it turns on. And some of these dash cams do the same thing. They have like a motion sensor in it that will pick up and start to record, which is also very helpful in other situations. Somebody bangs into your car in the parking lot, and you now have some video evidence of who did it.
Exactly. Glenn, when I wired mine, like you say, I went into a cigarette lighter, so mine's only running when the car is running. But if you have a professional install your dash cam, they can hot wire it to your battery so it's up and able to go 24 hours a day, even when you're not in the car and it's parked, for that very same reason. So, Glenn.
Right, and they're not always recording. They have a motion sensor in them. They turn on when it's necessary.
Exactly. Glenn, when you're in an accident and let's say there's no dash cam involved and the officer shows up at the scene and he listens to the two parties, and based on what he hears and sees, he issues a ticket to one of the drivers as being at fault. That ticket is not absolute evidence, is it, as ultimately when you're pursuing a personal injury case as to who was guilty or who was at fault in the accident?
Well, what surprises most people, Tom, that when we have this situation is that accident report is not even admissible in court. You cannot, nothing on that. You can bring the officer in to testify as to what he found at the scene, but there is no evidence of the traffic ticket. And unless somebody pleads guilty to the traffic ticket, their admission of nolo contendere, or I'm not going to fight the ticket, I'm just going to pay the fine, that's not admissible either. So who gets the ticket is important because the insurance companies do look at that, but it's not going to be evidence in a trial.
Yeah. Clint, I know that a lot of automobile accident cases are resolved without going to trial, but let's just say you had a client that was injured in an automobile accident. As far as you're concerned, it was the other driver's fault. And let's say that you got some dash cam video that supports that position. Would you, without a trial, would you be sharing that video with the insurance company's attorney and saying, hey, take a look at this and then let's talk?
It's always important to strategically decide when you're going to give that evidence up. We have had many cases where the adjuster doesn't want to pay because their insured said, I wasn't at fault. I didn't run the light. And we've told the adjuster, well, okay, we have dash cam video that shows that your client did run the light. And sometimes it's not even our client that has the dash cam video. We've had cases where there was another driver that had a dash cam video who stayed at the scene, who gave us a copy of the dash cam video. And that was important. So if you see an accident happen and you have a dash cam, it's important for you to stay at the accident scene to help that police officer figure out what happened.
Well, that's some great advice, Glenn. I appreciate that. Hey, Glenn, I was going to talk about another topic if you've got a few more minutes. Would you be able to stay on the other side of the break with us and go for a few more minutes?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's tell the listeners again where how they can reach you at your law firm here in Orlando.
They can reach me by phone at 407-841-7699, or they can email me at Glenn, Glen, at wdjustice.com.
And I know you've been a lawyer for a long time here in Orlando, just like me. How long have you been a lawyer?
Going on 41 years.
Okay, you're right there with me.
42. Actually, 42 years. Sorry.
Okay.
Can't do the math anymore.
I was admitted in 81, so that'd make you right around 83 or so.
That's correct.
So
1982 I got admitted, so this will be my 42nd year of practicing law.
You've seen a lot of changes in the law, Glenn, and when we were young lawyers, there was, by the way, in Florida, no advertising by lawyers allowed whatsoever, period, flat out, none at all allowed. And I remember when they were first allowed to advertise in the yellow pages, and all of a sudden, man, if you're a lawyer in Florida, you better be advertising in the yellow pages because all the other lawyers are. And so, question of how much you pay for your advertised bill depending on where your name goes in the yellow pages and whether they bold it and all that good stuff. If you remember that, Glenn.
Oh yeah, and I remember how many pages of ads there were in the yellow pages.
Oh, tons and tons and tons. I mean, it would be, if you're looking under lawyers, there'd be tons and tons and tons of ads before we even got to the first A lawyer.
That's correct. And frankly, our kids only knew a phone book because that's what they sat on at the dinner table because they needed to be a little higher in the chair.
Yeah. And then, and then eventually it was the Florida Bar was the one that governs advertising by lawyers in Florida, and it was the Florida Bar that said no advertising whatsoever. And, of course, there's some very smart lawyers out there that sued the Florida Bar, sued their own bar association saying, hey, First Amendment, freedom of speech, we should be able to advertise however we want to, and just kind of open up the door, started at Yellow Pages, but went from there.
1 minute.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the big advertisers here in Florida, I think, sold ads for the Yellow Pages when he was younger.
Oh, my goodness. All right, folks. Well, my guest today is Attorney Glen Wieland. We're going to take